Welcome back to the Student Hub Live. In this session, as part of our EMA and exam focus, we're going to be talking about the recall process and exam performance. And I'm joined by Rachel Penny from the Psychology Department. Now, psychology has loads to tell us about memory, which is really, really interesting. And those psychology students will learn an awful lot. But fundamentally, there's something different between putting stuff in and taking stuff out. And you're here to explain that today.
I'll do my best.
Great. Okay, so what is different then? What is the recall process and how is that different to the revision process?
So the recall process is all about being able to access the information. So revision is all about making sure you've covered the ground, you've read the right things, but recall is about being able to get it back again when you need it, when you're in that moment where somebody's asking you the question and you need to get that information. And so it's about practicing, accessing that information and being able to kind of store it in the best way you can so that there's almost triggers. You know, I think if you think of it like when you're being given directions to a new place and people will give you landmarks and when you see that petrol station, when you see that building on the left, when you see that crossroads, well, in a way, you're doing that internally when you're doing recall. So if you can, giving yourself those kind of landmarks makes it much easier to know you're on the right track. And that's really where we're trying to go with it, so that you make recall as easy as possible for yourself, actually.
See, that annoys me with directions because I'm the worst person ever at finding anywhere. And I'll listen really intently to people's instructions and none of it goes in. And then I think, how could I have listened to that? It didn't go into my memory, you know. And I guess recall is part of checking that you've actually got something in the bag, isn't it?
It is. And of course, some people do just find it easier than others. I mean, so if you're somebody that knows, you know, in a way that example is a really good one. How do you cope? Can you kind of give yourself those kind of triggers? If you know that's hard for you, well, it's about trying some other techniques and it's about seeing what works for you, and it might be that that's the bit you need to work at the most. So as much as planning your revision time, plan some time to test the recall, because that's just as important actually, because if you can access it, then you're helping yourself, you know. So I think it's about giving yourself those triggers, but you've got to find what triggers work for you. And for some people, they're very visual learners, so giving themselves visual pictures, or you can use mind maps, but you can also use sort of visual images, colours, etc., to kind of help your recall, so you can almost remember the notes on the page. For other people, they're much more verbal, so they might want to try something like mnemonics, which is about pairing an idea with something completely different. So they'll almost give themselves a story, and the different things on the story actually trigger different bits of the information. So I went to the shops today, and in the first shop, I picked up an item and it's this bit of your module that you've been learning. So then you remember the different shops, trigger the different bits of information. So that's another technique that some people really like to use. I end up remembering the story and not the bits. So I need to give myself the triggers that make me picture the underlined words on a page, you know. So different people are different and recall works differently for people.
And there are also different tasks, because I'm like, give me my lovely colour-coded definitions and pictures, I'm away. But a map or directions, I'm lost. And so even for some person, remembering different sorts of things can represent different challenges. And very often in an exam, you've got different things. It might be an essay and short answers, or you might have lots of different stuff. So it might be that students might need to think about different techniques and again, testing what does and doesn't work.
And actually, I can think of a really current example for me is my eldest daughter. She's doing her GCSEs at the moment. And for some subjects, she's creating flashcards, using index cards and writing key things down. And for other subjects, she's actually doing lots of past papers and working through practical examples. So totally different techniques for different subjects, and she finds that blend works really well for her. So you're absolutely right, different tasks might lend themselves better to different recall techniques. So again, try things out, find what works for you. Are there past papers for your module? If so, have a go at them, because then you get really used to the type of recall that you're going to be doing in that exam, because different tasks do benefit from different techniques. And again, what works for you. And it can be an individual thing.
And I guess with this sort of complexity, it's worth testing this earlier than like 2 days before the exam, isn't it? So that you can get so that you can get the revision and recall. They work hand in hand, don't they? So you almost need to test then, I guess, and carve out what's my exam going to cover. How do I go about doing that? And then can I retrieve what I've already stored down there, and if not, how am I going to then get it out? Bearing in mind, I guess, that with part of the revision process, you're learning stuff. It's just how you distill it, like Paul was saying, and then how you get it out. So when in the sort of process might students start thinking about that?
Oh, I think the earlier you start, the better. I mean, that's the golden, you know, lovely to have.
Says that. It's not helpful, Rachel.
It's not how I usually managed it when I was preparing for exams. So, you know, honesty check there. The earlier you can start, the better, because you start to work out the techniques that work for you. And actually, all the time you're doing those little bits of revision as you go. It is helping things go into your long-term memory and be more secure. And so that's obviously a bonus. But work with the time you have. So if you have a month to go, right, you've got a month to go. What can I do? And think about that. And so I think earlier the better, but whatever time you do have, maximise its use. So don't just cram stuff in, because if you don't give yourself those techniques for accessing it, you know your head's feeling really full, but it's almost like you can't just recall the exact bit of information you need. So actually it's almost better to not just cram tons in, but as you're revising, to be practicing it out. So again, past papers, stuff on your module website, you know, other things. Have you done similar tasks for other assignments, even on previous modules? What can you remember? How do you remember it? Talk about it with somebody. I mean, I'm a big fan of talking out loud about your learning, because I think as you do that, you put the stuff into your own words, and that helps you retain it and also get used to recalling it. So read a chapter and then go and find that family member or friend who thought it was a great idea, you were doing this degree, and you go and share that information with them. Most people are really happy to help you with your exam preparation. So don't be afraid to ask for help actually with recall, because it's actually part of the process. And for a lot of people, talking out loud is much better than just writing screeds and screeds and screeds and screeds and rewriting, you know, bits out of the books. To check your understanding, to get used to, because all the time you're talking out loud, you are actually doing that recall process. So you're doing it, you revise the stuff and then you recall it, revise and then recall. If it can work like that, that's the optimum.
Okay. Michelle, I know you often do this with your poor long-suffering husband.
I do. The problem I have is I have to be careful in the exam not to start talking out loud.
Yes, it's very important to practice the writing bit, isn't it?
Absolutely. Or even breaking into a little song if I've come up with a little song, or if I'm thinking, as we're talking about ways to remember things, I think of the zoo and the different animals, and each animal might stand for a concept. But then you've got to be careful that I'm not making the animal noises in the exam.
I know Angela was saying as well that she wished she could do the mind palace technique of trying to remember things, so you visualise yourself. I said, I'm not really good at a mind palace, more like a mind shed, because that's all I can fill up with what I can remember.
You're very critical, HJ. That sort of attitude won't get you anywhere.
We've got a couple of shout-outs here. We've got Libby. Sorry, Libby. I know that you come to us a lot, so I'm really sorry, Libby. Libby is doing a final TMA and 2 EMAs, so she's got a lot on at the minute. And then I think the point that you were making about people are there to help you and ask for help, because the revision process is that repetition, isn't it? And it's that saying it out loud or whatever you need to do to make it stick. But ask for help.
Well, we asked everyone at home for their tips, so let's see some of the things you had to say. So reading the question, a very, very important point. Revision cards, practice staying calm, rereading the question, read the question, excellent. Read the questions, excellent. Looking at past papers is great. Staying positive, HJ, eating breakfast, synthesising, glossaries are excellent as well. And practice, and question practice. So people can get as many past papers as they want from the USA shop, and they can just Google USA, and then you can go and get those free, and they email them to you. It's a really, really quick and painless process before you get them. Yes. But then it's the afterwards, isn't it? Now, I wonder if I can talk to you about something that we've got here, which is that in some cases there are scene exam papers, right? And so some students, and I think Libby had this a couple of years ago, would start then writing an answer and then try to recall their entire answer because they've got a scene question, okay? So what's the difference between measuring and recalling things conceptually or when you've actually know the question that you're going to get and then you might want to refine your answer?
Yeah, so I think having the scene questions can really help reduce the anxiety of am I revising the right things? So that's the big bonus. In some ways the limitation is actually what you've just described, is that students will then try and write the perfect essay for that question and then try and remember the perfect essay, and that's very difficult actually. And so I think with scene questions, the ideal is actually to try and, there's nothing wrong with practicing writing out the essay. It'll get you used to kind of how much you can write if you do it in a timed way. But try and distill it down into a plan, because actually then the sort of key phrases, or they'll act as jumping off points, but remembering 5 key phrases is a lot easier than 1,000 words, you know. And you'll end up sitting there trying to get frustrated trying to remember the perfect phraseology you used and that first sentence, and actually that can then really slow you down. So I think there are definite advantages to it in terms of reducing the anxiety and things, but it is a different process. And of course, in some ways, more, you know, there's the offset where if you don't know which exam question's coming up, there's a different expectation, because you're not going to remember all the key names or anything like that. Whereas if a scene essay question, then in theory you would have had time to know who were the relevant people. So the people that are marking your exam, they know whether it's scene question or not. They're not looking for perfect answers either way, because it's in an exam situation. So give yourself those key phrases, what is going to help you address that question. I mean, exactly what that word cloud was saying, it's all about the question and making sure you respond to that question. And so with an unseen essay questions, start with the question. Even if when you first look at it, you can't remember everything that's going to be relevant, start with that question. If somebody asked you that question on the spot, how would you answer it in that moment? That'll give you a starting point. And actually, the one thing I wanted to add about the word cloud is don't forget to have a good night's sleep. You know, people want to stay up all through the night cramming, but actually during our sleep, that's when our memory is consolidated. And so the best thing to do is to work to a certain time, but then make sure you get a good amount of sleep as best you can the night before, because actually that pays off in the exam, because it actually helps that last minute cramming stay in, actually. So it's a win-win situation, actually.
Now, one thing that came up there was reading the question and then answering the question. And we had some interesting conversations before today about how important that was when we both sat exams forgetting everything there was. Do you want to share some of your experiences?
Yes. So when I was doing the first year of my undergraduate degree, we had an essay-based exam, and there was going to be one essay. And I had decided which of the subdisciplines in psychology I was going to focus my energy on, because I didn't start early enough. And so I put loads of energy into revising particular topics, and none of them came up. And the question that came up was based on one lecture really early in the term, and that was it. So I remember reading my notes from that lecture about 3 months before, and that was all I had to go on. So all I could do in that moment was try and remember something of what the lecture had been, look at the question, and make sure everything I said for the next half an hour answered that question. And literally with this little I had recalled of that lecture, I just made sure I was really on that question and I didn't veer away from it. I couldn't have, even if I tried, but I had to answer the question in front of me. And actually I did really well in that essay, because I think I used what little I had and made it so direct to the question. Maybe that I did that better than maybe some people who had done more work, because they wanted to tell the examiner everything they knew rather than just the bit.
Years and those references and how they did this. And
rather than answer the question. So I'm not advising that you put all your eggs in one basket, what might come up, but the important lesson I learned was when I'm sitting down in an exam with an essay question, whatever I write, only write what helps answer the question in front of me,
Yes.
not what I know.
And that's really hard, especially in a pressured situation where you're trying to show off and demonstrate all of your knowledge and stuff. But very often, I mean, on one of these papers, there's such a little amount you can write in half an hour for an essay or so.
Yes.
You know, you can really only bring in a few studies and things like that. But often, you know, that can sort of be a real limiter.
And that's not a bad thing, because I think the temptation is to just, as we've just said, like cram everything on, quantity, quantity, quantity. And actually what the reader will be looking for is that you have used what you know to answer the question. So it is actually about quality and practice writing with the time you have for each essay, because that will give you a sense of how much you can do. And whatever you manage to write in your practice on the past papers with your books around you, then reduce it even further on the day, because you won't have that extra, you know, you won't have that extra information around you and you're not under that pressured environment. But the key thing is, the people marking your exam know what's achievable in that time. They're not expecting pages and pages. They're actually expecting what's realistic in that time frame. So don't worry if it doesn't feel like as much as you should be able to write. If you have got a clear sense of the direction of what you're doing, then make sure that that's all you try and do in that time, because it's better to stay relevant and have less than go waffling and have more, because you probably will start to lose the focus.
Now, can we talk about planning and things and using time in exams? Because I think this is a really important thing. So very often, students going into an exam, they'll get these answer booklets. And we were talking about how to best strategise. So you get these answer booklets and you've got all these pieces of paper within them that are blank until you fill them in. Great. So you've got your answer booklet, you've written everything in it, and then you can also get these supplementary ones, so they're just pieces of extra paper. One thing I used to do was to sort of go to the exam, write it, and then I'd allocate planning time for each one. So if I was doing 3 essays, I'd try and brain dump the stuff on there that I could write. Now, you can plan stuff and cross through in these things, and that can be quite a useful strategy to sort of initially get over those nerves and jitters. What ways might students be able to start doing that sort of thing in terms of allocating planning time in an exam and also structuring their work?
And I would absolutely agree that planning time at the start of the exam pays off dividends, because once you get past the first essay, you might panic and think, I can't now remember anything. If you've done a little sketch, like a little plan, however you want to do it, just keywords, key phrases, whatever it is, as soon as you get into the exam, brain dump your key phrases and things for all, however many essays you need to do, all 2 or 3 or whatever it is. Then when you come to essay number 2, you've got your plan, so you will be able to recall more, because you've already got that there, that little plan. Also, if you ran out of time to finish, you at least have signalled to the person marking your assignment where you were going to go. So again, it's almost like that working out. You remember maths exams when you were at school, and you put your working out down, because if you get your answer wrong, they can see how far through before you got it wrong, and also it gives a sense whether you're using the right techniques. So it's a similar kind of idea. If you have that little kind of plan, the person will know that you were absolutely on the right track and you just ran out of time to do your conclusion, and that's much better than just running out of time and not putting in a conclusion but not giving any sense of where you were going to end up. So it's a payoff. It's a completely good win-win situation. Yes, it costs you a few minutes at the start of the exam when you're doing that little planning, but it really will speed you up later. And it also probably will help calm you down, because you know you're not going to... There's nothing worse. I mean, when I look at this, it's like a blank computer screen.
It's terrifying,
and you're like,
isn't it?
As soon as you've got those little plans, you don't have a blank page anymore. You have got something to jump off from. So that in itself would just kind of go, okay, I'm not going to forget everything, because I have things there. And let's, be frank, you walk into the exam, you definitely have lots of things going around in your head, of course you do. So being able to just go, will actually help you focus more when you start writing, because you're not trying to keep essay 2's thoughts at the back of your mind, because you've already put them down.
And I guess then, after you've done those for the 3 essays, if there are 3, if you write the strongest one first, very often stuff comes back to you again, doesn't it? After you've written it, and then you're like, oh yeah, I remember that, and then you can keep adding it to each of those.
Absolutely. Your brain, once it gets going, is going to be, on firing on all cylinders. That's the good thing about nerves, actually, is they really focus your mind and your body on what you're doing.
And it's normal to be nervous, and those nerves can be helpful, can't they?
Yes. Well, I think so. I think adrenaline is there to be our friend in stressful situations, because it kind of gets rid of any extraneous stuff going on in our lives, and it just means we focus on that.
And to do things faster.
And you can do things faster, you know. So see it working with you. Don't be afraid of the nerves. Actually accept you are going to be nervous. I don't know anyone who doesn't have nerves going into exams. And if I met them, I don't know. I've never have yet, and I've been through a lot of exams and taught a lot of people going through exams. Nerves are normal. They're part of how we work. So just use them and try and kind of accept that to feel them is not strange. And again, I think because of the distance learning thing, it can feel you're on your own, and you think, I'm the only person who's nervous, I didn't like exams at school, and I'm the only one that's nervous. And of course, that's just not true. And this is, I mean, as your previous person was saying, this is your chance to show off. This is your chance to show what you've learned. And the expectations are based on the time you have and the tasks you have got ahead of you. So just relax, know what's going to happen, know the tasks that you're going to face, and have a plan for them. And that is your winner there.
Oh, brilliant. That's been absolutely fantastic, Rachel. Just before we end, I'd like to see what people have been saying, because we asked if you'd fill in our word cloud. When I'm nervous, it helps if I. So let's see some of the advice that you've got for yourselves. Breathe deeply, excellent. Write down my worries, work out, relax, smile, drink tea, have cake, focus on the now. Some brilliant ideas. Eat chocolate, move around, concentrate, sing and eat beforehand. So some really good ideas here about things that people are using to sort of work with those strategies and sort of try and offset some of that. But as you say, those nerves can be really helpful.
And take lots of breaks.
Yeah.
You know, when you're revising, it can be easy to think, I'm just going to sit all day and work. And actually your brain, your body, everything does need a break. So get up, walk around, get outside if you can. It's a lovely time of year. You know, borrow a friend's dog, go out for a walk in your local park, just clear your head for a minute. Again, it will actually help your learning process, it'll help your recall.
You can often think, what was I reading about?
Yeah, and just have a little chat with yourself, actually. You know, we're talking about talking out loud. You know, when I'm walking my dog down by the river, I quite often have a little conversation with myself about what tasks I've got to do. You know, actually, it's fine.
Brilliant. Well, Rachel, thank you so much. That's been really, really helpful. And I hope you've enjoyed that at home too. We're going to have a short break and do another of our campus tours now to look at the Jenny Lee building. And then we're ending our final session of this morning's programme talking about exam logistics and support. I'll see you in a minute.